views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good evening and welcome to BronxTalk. Periodically, we like to check in on Bronx artists to see what they're up to, and tonight we have two great ones. As you know, I'm always excited about talented Bronxites, but right off the bat tonight, I can't claim objectivity because one of tonight's guests happens to be my wife. But you will soon see why we decided to have her on the show tonight. Our other Bronx artist is Hal Katz, who also does extraordinary work. We have two supremely talented people with us tonight, and so to help celebrate the 4th of July holiday, we'll enjoy talking with them and viewing their wonderful work. Now, if you have questions or comments, and I hope most of the comments are going to be like, oh my goodness, how great, on whatever you see tonight, then send them in an email to us at BronxTalk@BronxNet.org, or you post them on our Facebook page, and we'll read them on the air during a future edition of our program. For the here and now, it is Bronx artist Hal Katz. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. And yes, my beautiful, wonderful wife, Suzanne Axelbank. Nice to have you with us. I got the pronunciation right.
You got it right.
Suzanne, let's start with you. And I know some of the answers to these questions, but I'm going to ask them anyway. How did you get started making artwork, and what inspired you?
Well, I always drew pictures as a kid, and I always used to doodle, and everyone thought my doodles were cute, but I didn't really develop it. And one day I saw somebody else's work. They had used markers and some paints, and I was never much of a painter. I said, markers, I could do that. And I just tried, and I kept on working at it, and I've really enjoyed myself a lot doing it.
How prolific are you? I mean, do you do one a week, one a month? How do we decide?
You know, when I first started really doing it, I just kept on doing one after another. So many that I was really surprised. Now it's slowed down a bit. You can't be that prolific, but when something really strikes you, it's like you just take it out of the air. You just sit in front of that canvas and it just happens.
Inspiration? What do you use for inspiration? I hope you're not going to say you're a talk show host husband. Mostly because many of the things she does are kind of abstract. But go ahead.
You know, I really can't say because I never really know what's going to happen when I sit down. It just happens.
All right.
It's like a voice in me that speaks about things that I can't speak about.
All right.
So.
Mr. Katz, same question for you. How'd you get started making paintings?
Same answer as your wife's.
Oh, so why did we have you here?
I don't know. I started drawing. My mom used to draw, and we used to play drawing games when I was a little boy, and that's where it really developed. She wasn't an artist, but she could copy anything.
Did you say to yourself, gee, the drawings are nice, they're coming out well, I always wanted to do this, or did you kind of leave it and then later on came back to it?
I always wanted to do this, but I grew up very poor, and I just didn't want my children to grow up that way, so I went into business first, and I quit the business after my second kid graduated college and became an artist.
And same question for you then. How prolific are you? Do you work every day? Do you have a lot of output?
I don't have a lot of output. Some of the work that you'll see tonight could take me almost 200 hours for one piece.
Wow.
So I'm not in a hurry.
I guess you really both did have a similar answer. So what we want to do, because talk is cheap, we want to show you the work of both of these artists. So we're going to start with Suzanne's work. This picture that I happen to know, and the pictures are right here, and people are going to switch them. As I understand, and as you told me, this is one of your first. Talk to me about this particular one here.
This is one of my first pictures. It's a teardrop. It's you know, it just kind of happened.
Let's make sure that they get a shot of it while we're.
And I was experimenting, and this was one of my first experiments.
Hang on 1 sec. I want to make sure we get it. We don't want to. We're going to get that picture there. There we go. Okay. So go ahead. Now tell us. So you talked about it. I'm going to get out of the way. You talked about it being a teardrop.
Well,
Tell me.
it's a teardrop. I don't know if I was upset that day or if I was thinking of something sad. I don't think so. It just kind of happened, and I was experimenting with the materials, and it's really one of the very first I did that wasn't just lips and eyes. You know, I was really thinking, and this is what happened.
One of the things that will come through in all of the work that we see is the extraordinary detail. Do you visualize the painting before you do it, or is it the kind of thing that it kind of just develops as it's happening?
You know, sometimes I have an idea what I'm going to do, but most of the time it just kind of happens. If it's very abstract, it totally just happens. If there's some kind of a figure, then I've thought about it a little bit.
Mm-hmm. All right, now this next one, you had said that was one of your earliest ones. This is essentially the most recent.
This is the most recent one. This is the last one I have finished. And this I did think about what I was going to do. I had this idea of naked women just frolicking.
Sorry to be laughing.
Frolicking in the garden.
And that's what we see around, around the sides there.
Yes, they are all naked.
Okay, and now I can tell because I watched this thing develop, and at first it was all the outside. At what point did you say, we'll put the tree and the moonshine and everything inside?
It's very hard to say because it just seemed like with all these women dancing around that there should be trees. It should be in a garden, and then after there was a garden, there should be a moon up there, and then after the moon, maybe there are clouds in the sky.
So
and
something
stars.
speaks to you.
Something speaks to me, yes.
One of the things, and one of the reasons why we didn't want to do it digitally, and we kind of complicated our studio crew, was because I wanted to show a lot of this work is textured and all that. So let's take a look at the next one. And this one is wholly different. Now, I don't know if people can tell, but the dress of this woman is actually, I guess, a piece of mesh.
It's a window screen.
A window
screen. I cut
screen.
up a window screen. And,
no wonder we're getting mosquitoes at night, right?
And it wasn't done with thought. I mean, until I started it, then there was some thought involved. But it was just, how do I use this screen?
The other thing which we're going to see in all of it, I don't want to touch it and kind of ruin it, but there's an immense amount of texture. Talk somewhat about the materials that you use, because other artists might be interested.
I literally squeeze paint out of its containers. Now I have other containers I squeeze the paint into so I can get very fine tip. But I just squeeze the paint. I don't use brushes. I use markers. And I just...
And so it's really like that painting is a combination of all those things.
Yes, it is.
This next one is, a lot of people have, noticed it. I know that I was there, you had a show the other day about at one of the Talila, the local bar on 238th Street and Bailey Avenue. And this one caught a lot of people's eyes. Tell me something about this.
This is an interesting thing because I had a little elephant that I traced, and then I was checking out different pens that I had, and I didn't know how my pens would look. I had gotten some new pens, and I just drew in each elephant, and this is how it came out. And then I work out what the middle will look like, and then I start making my little dots of paint all over.
It's really very difficult to ask you questions because you don't seem to be able to explain it. It just simply comes out of you.
They all just happen.
What are the most difficult things about doing something like that? And the next one is so detailed that it's kind of unbelievable. But go
Because
ahead.
I really don't know what's going to happen, and I don't always know what a particular paint is going to do or what a particular color will look like. Sometimes I look at a pen mark I made and it's too light, but when you walk away and you look at it, it just adds something to it, even if you didn't see it at first.
Well, this one, again, another one that the people who came to that exhibition really, really appreciated. It's got just incredible. Could we zoom into that and just look at some of the detailed work on that? I guess the question has to be asked, how, let's zoom in almost as far as we can. How long did it take you to do that?
This one probably took me a couple of weeks on and off. You know, I go back to
Can we
things.
zoom in even tighter? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I walk away from things, I go back to things. The gold around the edges, I had no idea how that would come out. That was the first time I did that in those corner pieces, you know, where it's kind of faded. Everything is an experiment still for me.
Well, you know, I can humbly say, as part of the family, it may be an experiment to you, but it really looks like just incredible work. In terms of the center design on that one, did you plan it out?
No.
Didn't plan it out, and then you name it and decide what it's like.
You know, it
after
looked
the
like
fact?
someone giving birth. So that's what I called it.
Birth.
But I think it's very interesting that a person who thinks maybe they may not have art in them, if you sit down and you do something, you never know what's going to happen, what's going to come out.
This next one may be, out of all your work, which of course I've seen, may be the most specific of all. This really
Yeah.
tells what I think is a wonderful story. So tell me a little bit about
You know,
that
it's
story.
all different kinds of churches. It's a Jewish synagogue. It's a Mormon church. Somewhere in there is a voodoo. There's Rastafarian in there.
And that would be each one of these all the way around.
Every one of them is different. A
Great.
Shinto, I don't know if you'd call it a church. There's just every kind. And in the words there, which were not meant to be beautiful, they were meant to run into each other, are different names of God running into each other, because to me it's all the same thing.
So you made a little political statement.
Yeah, I
with
did.
this.
And if you follow the path, it all leads to you, which is really...
Oh, you is all the way up on the
Yes,
top
yes.
so people could see.
There's a Roman thing there. There's an African hut. There's a roundhouse for Native Americans. There's all kinds of things there.
I've got a couple.
Muslim.
I've got a couple more here. That this one I just love is extraordinary, and I'm going to hold it slightly to the side so people could see that they're actually raised. These are actual tiles on this.
Right.
This was actually, I've got it upside down.
I made the tiles.
So you
Yeah.
painted each one of the tiles and then decide to put the tiles on there. Did the little pictures of tiles come first, or did the actual
The painted tiles.
the painted tiles?
Yes, I covered a whole mirror in our house with those tiles.
I am aware of that. I do look into that mirror. If people want to see your artwork, what do they have to do?
On Facebook right now is a page, Art Suzanne Designs.
Okay.
And that's where I have most of my pictures right now. That's, you know, I'm going to make a website too, but right now that's where they would have to look.
Suzanne, thank you so much
Oh,
for
you're
showing
welcome.
the work. And our next artist who's been sitting patiently, and we started to put his artwork up here, is Hal Katz. Hal, let's start here. What do we got here?
It looks like a train to me.
Talk to me a little bit about, because certainly compared to Suzanne's work, yours is, I guess, less freeform and much more specific.
This one, yes. When I was much younger, I saw a mechanical drawing.
I'm going to get out of the way so they can get a good picture of it. Go ahead.
I saw a mechanical drawing of a train engine, and I just fell in love with it and wanted to buy it, and I couldn't. And 20 years later, I decided, it was still in my head, I was going to try to draw it. And so I did, and that's what came out.
Talk to me about materials.
It's a pen and ink.
This is pen and ink. Let's say
The train
compared
is
to
pen and
Suzanne.
ink.
Right.
Yes. And the background is also ink.
A cityscape of sorts, I suppose.
It's an abstracted cityscape,
An
yes.
abstract cityscape.
I sort of like the super realism with the abstract,
Right.
and I put a little whimsy into it when I can.
There you go. The next one is actually what you told me before the show was actually your first one.
First serious one.
First serious one. If we can get a shot of that, it's actually extraordinary.
Oh, thank you.
Even though you say it's your first one. So can we give it an age, a date? How long
Yeah, this
ago?
was done in the early 90s. And what I was doing was trying to figure out how I can get texture using a pen and how I could get gray tones using a pen. And when you look at it, these are all black ink, and yet the grays and the whites and the blacks are very visible. They're not cross-hatched. And I'll give you a trade secret. I never throw pens away when they're running out of ink, because you can get gray when they don't.
Oh, and,
So-
and of course your colleague here, Suzanne, is acknowledging that that is in fact the case. Did you copy an actual?
Yes.
Like you had I presume you would have to have done that.
Yeah, I opened the book and copied
Right.
the tiger.
Did the tiger get some royalties? Probably not.
Yeah, he did. He got a little milk bowl.
So this one also is just extraordinary, and you know, if you, I don't know if people will be able to see it from where I'm sitting. I'm going to move back to get out of the way so we can get a good shot of it, but it's like they're raised. Explain what it is. It's silly for me to explain what these things are.
It's actually the name of the piece is fences.
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 Okay.
And there's clear plastic fence that goes across the whole thing.
Right.
And in order for that not to damage the painting, it's not on the painting. It's actually on the covering.
Do you have a preference in terms of what you do in terms of whether you like things that are more abstract or, let's say, more literal, like the train or the tiger?
I like everything.
Ah, there you go.
You know, when you start something, I'm going to replicate what she said. You don't always know where it's going. Interestingly, I read a couple of books on how authors write novels.
Right.
And one was by Norman Mailer and the other was Stephen King. And they both said once they start writing the book, the plot takes over. The book writes itself.
The book writes itself.
The painting paints itself.
This is really a sophomoric, amateurish question. Do you draw these circles freehand?
They're not,
Well, maybe not literal circles.
and they're not drawn.
Oh, they're not
They're sprayed.
sprayed.
The whole painting is a spray.
All right, so now my mind is blown. That's nice.
Yeah.
Let's go to the next one, and let's look at what we've got here.
I just call this one optimism. You know, reaching for the sky
I like that.
kind of thing, and it's painting to paint it itself. You know, you look for form, and what takes over is, does it look nice on the paper? And
At the beginning of the show, you told us a little bit about the time it takes, and you know, the painting takes itself. For example, is this one of those that takes you a long time?
no, this one probably took me a week. The train took me a long time.
You know, I know that Suzanne works out of our home, so I know that that's where her studio is. What about you? You work
Out of my home.
Out of your home? Has it been like you've dedicated a significant amount of space to
2 rooms.
2 rooms to doing it? Wow. Now we have some stuff on digitally that we're going to show. Oh, we're going to show this one first. This one is a big, heavy picture. Are we going to be able to get this one? And then we're going to show a couple, which Hal, you're going to have to explain what those are. But
Okay.
let's do this one first. Okay, can we get that right on here? There we go. I guess I'll angle it this way. Tell us a little bit about what this is.
What your wife really explained it with her tree.
You want to bring her around a
You
little
know,
more.
it really was. The trees were something that evolved after I finished the rest of the painting. That was the last thing that happened, was the 6 trees came in there.
The trees will last.
They were the very last things. And while it looks like they're painted in between all of the other things.
So you sprayed first?
Yes. It was sprayed and dripped and over dripped.
Wow. Now, maybe you can, one of our crew members could grab that from me. So I want to talk about this idea of these paintings that you make that change colors. Tell me something about that.
Okay, well,
And those we're going to show on the screen.
okay. Most of those are mandalas.
Mandala.
Mandala.
So leave it like this for a moment so you can explain. Go ahead.
A mandala, I think, is Sanskrit meaning magic circle.
Okay.
It's used in almost every religion. If you see stained glass windows, or you see sand paintings that the Dalai Lamas do, and things like that.
Right.
It's if you look through a kaleidoscope.
That's what I was
Yeah.
thinking of when I was looking
In fact, initially I called these kaleidographs
at. Okay.
because I didn't know what a mandala was.
And then when it changed, then what happens to turn that, what we saw, it went to like a
You
blackened
can't,
thing.
yeah, you can't see the entire mandala in one sitting. When I'm doing it, I'm actually drawing two mandalas at the same time. One that you could see in the daytime, like this one, and one that when you turn the lights out.
Okay.
Gives you a whole
so
nother image.
hypothetically, the one there it is, you can
Yes.
see that when you turn the lights
That's what
out.
this looks like when you turn the lights up.
And I guess so. In a way, you're making two paintings at once.
Yes,
So do you visualize both of them at the same time, or you kind of?
yes.
Now, why does that work? It's again a very amateur sophomore question.
Did you ever
but
look through a kaleidoscope?
kaleidoscope, of course.
You ever see anything ugly?
No.
That's why it works.
I meant literally so like this one, and now if we could get a shot of this, this is one of those.
This takes a long time.
It
yeah.
takes a long time. And what is the material you use? You use different kinds of.
It's all ink or acrylic.
And so if we were to turn off the lights, much like the ones we saw digital, that's what we would see.
Yes.
You say it takes a long time. Again, I'm sorry. I know it's just such a rudimentary question. How long did it take you to make?
This one took me about 180, 200 hours.
200 hours.
Yeah.
And now Suzanne talked about a stencil to make, because it really has to be in perfect proportion. Tell me a little bit about, how you do it to get it in that perfect proportion. I mean, is it a matter of a compass kind of thing? Do you sketch it out?
What I do is I do a series of, the first decision is how many facets am I going to draw.
Right.
Some of them have as few as 4, the biggest one that I have is 72 facets. And each facet is a replication of itself.
72 facet, like little sections.
Each one of these is a facet, and each one of them is equal to the other ones. And it's done with compass, and it's done with straight edges, and it's done with
And
pen. It's
are
mostly
you
pen.
constantly turning the lights off?
No.
Well, I would think you would want to, because
I'm as
you,
surprised as everybody else.
really.
Well,
So
I-
you know that if you use a certain kind of paint, that's the one that's going to emerge if it's darker, right? And then you just watch and wait and see what happens.
Well, actually, I don't.
It's not
see-
on the screen right now.
It's very hard to photograph. There are actually more colors in the dark than show on the screen, and the reason for that
Yeah,
is
we can see that there. Okay.
yeah, there's sort of fuchsias kind of
Okay.
colors and things. The reason it doesn't photograph well is because I've painted over another color,
Right.
and the thing that I've painted over with is blue, and the thing underneath is like a day glow color, and so it changes
So
the
that's
colors.
what changes. You know,
But the photograph only picks up the
it's
blue.
much like in television we have chroma key and things like that. Very, very interesting. We're almost out of time. Hal, beforehand you told me that you had lived elsewhere and you had done artwork elsewhere, but you were really happy about the community, the artist community in the Bronx. Talk to me about that. a little bit.
Absolutely. My introduction to the artist community was through the Riverdale Art Association,
Okay.
which is the first thing I ever joined anywhere ever.
Right.
And it turned out to be a network of people, that I like, who like me, who are doing things. They do shows together, so I get to hang with
And
them.
you know, I'm always interested in characterizing the Bronx and the Bronx art scene. You like haven't found that kind of inspiration or that kind of community elsewhere. I like that, is what I'm hoping to hear.
I haven't.
Yay, I like that.
But then, you know, I never went to school. I am a self-taught artist, so
There you go.
I've never taken a class.
Suzanne, this is a really bad question. What's next? You like in your mind? Do you say, well, okay, so I worked on these square 12-inch things, or I've worked on larger? What's next, and how do you decide what's next?
Well, that's a tough question. I just keep on going with what I'm doing. I order more
Like
art
you'll order some
supplies.
supplies,
Yes,
right?
I've just ordered some more recently.
Okay.
And I'm just gonna use them. And
So-
but you know what? I've learned a lot from looking at your things.
At Hal's
At
work.
Hal's work, and I've learned a lot, and I'm looking at it and I see certain things that have actually inspired me. So, and then the thing about art is that I'm going to make something thinking about his things, and it's not going to be anything like his.
Real quick, because we're going to ask you the same question and Hal the same question. So you get the canvas, right? You do it, and then you just kind of start creating without a plan.
Yes.
You do a similar process?
I draw concentric circles, and
See what happens.
then I draw lines
All right.
into each of the facets, and then I see what happens.
We are in the presence of genius, ladies and gentlemen. Hal Katz, thank you so much.
My
Suzanne
pleasure, thank
Axelbank,
you.
I'll see you later. Thank you so much. And thanks to the crew that worked really, really hard. If you have further comments or questions on anything, aside from, oh my goodness, on anything you heard on tonight's show or anything going on in the Bronx, you email them to us at BronxTalk@BronxNet.org. You put them on our Facebook page, and we'll read them on the air during a future edition of our program. By the way, we didn't put your website, or I didn't mention, what is your website?
HalCatStudio.com.
HalCatStudio.com, and of course we had Art Suzanne Designs on Facebook. Okay, so we ask you also to, speaking of Facebook, please like Bronx Talk on Facebook. You can check out the archives at BronxNet.org. You find Bronx Talk on the lower right navigation bar. We thank our producer, Jayla Juberis. The director is Shirley Arrieta, and I really thank the crew that I know I drove them crazy tonight, but that's life. We'll see you next week. Happy holidays. Bye.
Hello, good people of the Bronx and beyond. Welcome to A Life in Art.
Hi, I'm David Lesh, legal correspondent to the Morning Show Open. If you have a legal question that you'd like me to answer, please send me an email at davidlesh@bronxnet.org, and I will address it on our Ask Your Lawyer segment.
Morning, Gary. We are GetSchooled.com. You want a college education, don't you?